Hi traders, welcome to this demonstration video of how to draw a trend line and how you can use trend lines as a basis for automated trading within the foreign exchange market. First of all, we're using the MetaTrader 4 trading platform here, which is pretty ubiquitous for retail foreign exchange traders. It's supplied by MetaQuotes, and it's a good base platform to start your foreign exchange trading from. Trend lines are used extensively as ways to identify potential turning points in the market. So in this case here, we can see we've got a dollar-yen chart running on a daily time frame, and we can see how price action moves over time, and we can also see these points where price action came up and then was rejected, came down and was rejected, and these are called swing points. And a swing point, a swing high in this case, where I'm mousing over now, is where a high was formed, but either side of it, the candles either side, their highs were lower. So we had a high surrounded by candles with lower highs. So this is an example of a swing high, that's an example of a swing high, there's one there, and there, and there. So when you draw a trend line, ideally a properly drawn trend line with high integrity should be drawn through at least 3 swing high points or 3 swing points. So in this case, we saw that this trend line, once it was formed, had high integrity because price action came once it was you'd gone through the 3rd swing point. Price action came back, it got pretty close to it, rejected quite extensively. Remember, on a daily chart here, so if you'd come in the trade here, it was only 18 pips away, you'd have seen a downside move off rejection, 400 pips there, so pretty impressive. Again, it actually touched the trend line almost pip perfect there, a rejection of 220 pips. And then nothing lasts forever, so eventually price action broke through, but interestingly, look what happens, look how significant that old trend line became, because the break went through, price then retraced back to the trend line, and again back to the trend line, back to the trend line. Trend lines, well, price has memory, so it's important to keep an eye on historical trend lines, particularly on these longer time frames. Trend lines drawn on longer time frames have far more integrity than short-term trend lines drawn on lower time frames. So in the same way that we can identify swing high points, we can draw a trend line through swing low points. So in this case, we've got a swing low here, and sometimes you're not going to get it exactly right, but again, you can see this trend line covered or went through 3 swing low points. I'm using a bit of poetic license here, but the foreign exchange market is not perfect, so you should only use these things as a guide. So your entries, you should build some flexibility around your entries so that you can pick up an entry, slightly above the trend line, slightly below it, etc. So we saw here again, interestingly, 3 swing lows, high integrity trend line. Price action then came down, retested, rejected, 160, 170 pip, moved to the upside on the rejection, and eventually it got broken. And hey presto, retested the old trend line here, this kind of wedge formation. So this is kind of the basis of how you can start to automate trades using an automated trading system such as the one that we developed called Platinum up here. And what I'll do in further videos is explain to you how you can combine support and resistance based trading techniques using trend lines and also price derived support and resistance. And what I mean by that is, if you look at this chart over the longer time frame, so I'm looking at a weekly chart now. Price derived support and resistance is areas where price retraces, so it's kind of like consolidation areas, which you can see either swing lows and swing highs do count, but also you can see much bigger consolidation areas on a weekly basis. So we saw again, a big low area around here. We've got this area here. I'm drawing this horizontal line here. This basically coincides with this area of resistance up here, and guess what happens? Price comes back down, retests those historical levels, and then rejects. So if you had entered the market around here because you'd seen back in February 2010, or sorry, April 2010, there was a significant level of resistance on the dollar yen here, you'd have known that this was a critical level, and we can actually kind of tell because it's around about the 95 level, which is a psychological level anyway. So again, if you traded this on the long side and built yourself some flexibility, and you could automate that trade using an automated trendline trading system for your entry, you'd have made 630 odd pips, assuming you'd probably wouldn't. You'd have trailed up and maybe got stopped out at somewhere like 400 or so. But still, it's this is the way to trade the foreign exchange market. Indicators all lagging. They will tell you things that price has already told you. So trading based on support and resistance techniques, previous price action, pivots, trend lines, this is the way to trade the foreign exchange market, and this is kind of what the institutions do. So if we move back to our daily chart, and then I click this platinum button up here, this loads up our automated trendline trading system, and all I got to do if I want to start configuring these trend lines to auto trade is load my expert advisor onto the system, onto the MetaTrader 4 environment, scan my chart. I've already got the system running on other stuff, so I'm just going to screen out my dollar yen pairs here, and you can see I've got 3 trend lines here. So I can look at this trend line here, which is 24557, select it using the interface, and what I might want to do here is configure this to go long. So if price action comes back down and retests this trend line, I want to go long. So I just click buy, and if I want the trade behavior to be a touch-based trade where price action comes down and just literally touches the trend line within a sensitivity barrier, which we can define here of X pips, say 5 pips away, I can then execute that trade. I can also do all kinds of other stuff with this interface, like set multiple take profit targets, so I can scale out and using up to 4 take profit levels. I can trail my stop. I can define when my stop will stop to be trailed, i.e. how many pips in profit we want to be. I can define filters, so I can enter the trade based upon oscillator levels. I can define how my trendline data is displayed on the chart easily. So for example, if I save those settings and then just right click on this chart and show object descriptions, you can now see it's configured this trend line as 24457 US dollar JPY by touch. So, and in the same way, this trend line down here, which is 24652, I may want to configure this trend line to what we can do. Well, I think price could reject off this. So sell touch, 5 pip sensitivity, profit controls. We'll just use say a 100 pip profit target. Save those settings. Show the actual trigger grid on the chart so you can see where your stop loss and your levels are. You can see the trigger grid is here in green. I can change that easily to something a bit more visible for you. So let's go to yellow, and we'll use a dotted line as well. Save those settings. Sorry, I got yellow and white. I'll just use yellow for both. And now I can see my trigger grid displayed on the chart. The trigger grid in this system is basically a way to, it allows the trader to easily see where their support or their stop loss and take profit levels are. as we're trading on a daily chart here, 20 pips is much too tight. You want to be giving yourself a lot more room for maneuver. So, and you can get an idea of where to set your stops by using the average true range for the particular pair you're trading. So if I just load on the average true range here for dollar yen, you can see here we can read off the ATR level for dollar yen, and it's running at 79 pips per day. So if we thought this trend line could get tested for a day, we really want to give ourselves a 79 pip stop, because the chances are that price will move in a 79 pip range based upon this ATR level down here. It's 80 or so. So on the other hand, if you're a shorter term trader and you're thinking, well, I think this trend line will be tested for a couple of hours, then you could obviously look at the hourly chart, and you could read off the ATR level from the hourly chart, which is much lower. It's only 17 pips. But what I'm going to do in this case, as I don't like short-term trading, so I'm going to increase my stop level to something a bit more realistic. So trendline 24652, select it in the interface, screen out dollar yen again, and I'm going to increase my trend line to a much bigger figure, such as say 80. So I'm just dialing it up now, and obviously in the same token, good risk reward. Let's go for maybe 120, and I'll take profit. Okay, so our take profit level was moved to 120 pips. Let's just get rid of the interface for a second and make sure that kind of makes sense. Is that achievable? Let's just scale out a little bit. So we're basing this trade on a retest of this original support line, which has now become resistance. And yeah, I mean, that's easily done. There's plenty of downside potential here from this trend line. Yeah, because we wouldn't expect to see any form of reaction until it retests this area of support down here, unless there are pivots in the way, of course. And obviously we could look at layering over some daily pivots, for example. So let's have a look at daily pivots version 3. Again, it's another FX AlgoTrader product. I'm just going to load those onto this chart now, and zooming in a bit, go down a time frame. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. We can see yesterday's high coinciding with roughly where our entry points are going to be, and also a pivot confluence. We've got yesterday's high and the R1 pivot for the day, and our take profit target is around about the S2 support level. If we wanted to get really into this, we could layer in weekly and monthly pivots as well, just to check on pivot confluences and all that kind of good stuff. But principally this demo is just about talking about how to draw trend lines, how to plan your stop loss and take profit levels, and how to then automate your trade setups using an automated trend line trading tool such as, in this case, Platinum. But we also market other tools such as Iridium and Gold, which don't have the Java interface. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. I hope this was a little bit useful for you. Any questions, please don't hesitate to send me an email, info@fxalgotrader.com.